One of my favorite investors of all time is a guy I call Don the carpet layer. Don used to come into our Mulberry office. He was always dressed in Levi's, had a blue shirt, had a little white circle over the pocket. It was embroidered in red and said Don. He was Don the carpet layer. And he would come in, a lot of times Don would always look at his feet. He would say, Larry, what do you have for me this week? And I said, well, Don, what are you looking for? And he says, well, you know, and a lot of times he would say this. He'd say, you know, if a man can buy a good piece of real estate with 20% down and have it break even, a man ought to do that. A man could get rich doing that. And Don started to do that. He would buy these properties. They had good bones. They were in good locations. Many times they needed some carpet and some paint. He could do that. That's what he did. He could do the tile. But he wouldn't fix them and flip them. He would fix them and hold them and rent them out. In all the years I worked with Don, I don't think Don ever made more than about $35,000 a year as a carpet layer. But I saw him the other day and we were talking about his properties. He has $35,000 a month now of income in wake-up money. He's invested wisely. Just a very simple man with a very simple approach that really worked well for him. So let's take a look at this. When we talk about return on investment, let's define return on investment. And let me show you then the returns from real estate. So if you take the income and divide by your investment, that's what we call the return on investment, sometimes called the ROI. As an example, if we had $1,000, if we had invested $10,000 and that investment generated $1,000 a year of income, we would have a return on investment of what? 10%. Okay? Very, very simple. So now when you understand return on investment, let's look at real estate. Real estate has 4 returns on investment. The one that we're really interested in, that we're focused on, is the return from cash flow. The rents. That's what's going to generate the wake-up money. You know, the appreciation is a bonus, but that's important too, but we're going to focus on cash flow. In the beginning, we're going to have to finance the properties probably with some good debt. And so we have a tenant there that's paying us rent, and some of that rent, maybe even almost all of the rent, is going to pay the loan. And every month, the principal reduces. In essence, that tenant is buying us the property. And then, of course, there's appreciation. We don't know if there's appreciation. We hope there is, and over time there has been. But our primary focus is the rents and the principal reduction. There's a fourth return, which is depreciation. There are some tax benefits. We tend not to focus too much on those because, you know what, once we start to focus on that, it no longer becomes simple. When you start talking about depreciable life and recapture, I watch people start to fog over. And so I just say, you know what, there is a benefit here. Why don't you check that out with your accountant? They'll go through it with you. We're going to focus primarily on these 3. Rent or cash flow, principal reduction, and appreciation. Those are the big 3 for us. So let's take a look at these 3 returns on investment in real estate. And this is a simple example of a property over on Pioneer Drive. The investor who purchased it bought it for $200,000. They put $40,000 down. They had $5,000 in closing costs. So their initial investment was $45,000. Got a $160,000 loan. At that time, the interest rate on that loan was 5.5%. 30-year fixed rate loan, $908.46 a month in principal and interest payments. When we start to look at their estimated cash flow, we can see that that property rents for $1,400 a month. The payment is $908.46 plus the monthly taxes of $89, the monthly insurance of $50. Now, in this particular analysis, the investor, number one, didn't want to manage the property themselves. So you'll see a property management fee there of $120. In our market, you know, a general rule of thumb is probably 8 to 10% of the rent is what is going to get charged for property management. And in this particular case, they used $50 as a monthly contingency fee or maintenance fee. Given the age of this property had been redone, so maybe that's okay, but generally given the age of this property, I probably would have allocated a little bit more for that. If it's a brand new property, if it's under warranty, obviously it'd be less. If it's an older property, you might want to allocate a little bit more. But as we flow through this, we can see that this property generates about $182 a month of cash flow. And that's after paying a property manager. So we can see the cash flow, the annual cash flow here is almost $2,200 a year. So when we take a look at the three forms of investment, or the three returns on investment, when we look at the three returns on investment, we see the return from cash flow is that almost $2,200 a year, divided by our initial investment of $45,000. So what's our return from cash flow? Almost 5%. Is that better than having money today in a savings account? Just that alone is not bad, okay? Then keep in mind that every month that monthly payment is reducing the principal. And the principal reduction the first year is $2,155 divided by the $45,000. So we see then from principal reduction, what is our return on investment? Another 4.79. So assuming the property doesn't go up at all, just from cash flow and principal reduction, it's a 9 to 10% return on investment. In this particular case, we've estimated the appreciation on this property at 2%. You might want to estimate 0%. The reason we picked 2% in this particular case, in this particular price range, in our market right now, these properties are appreciating. We're running out of them, there aren't enough of them, and so this appreciation in our market over time has been 5%, but we're being a little more conservative, we're using 2% in this particular case. You could easily put in here 0 if you're nervous about it, just don't plan on appreciation. If it comes, it's a bonus. And so we can see the return from appreciation is $4,000 divided by $45,000, or another, what? About 8.89%. When we total it up, we total all three, we end up with a return on investment of about 18.5% on this property. Now, many times when I show this simple example, people say to me, wow, I just can't believe that seems really high. Well, maybe it does compared to the return on a savings account or the return on a stock portfolio over time. I think if you look at stocks over 40 or 50 year period, it's been in the 8 to 9 to 10% range. That's 18.5 seems pretty high. But you know what? With almost 40 years in real estate, this does not seem high to me. I know many investors who are achieving 18 to 24% returns fairly consistently if you follow the fundamentals that we teach you. Let's just review. What did we just see? Well, we saw a return on investment from cash flow of 4.87%. From principal reduction, 4.79%. From appreciation, 8.89%. Total return, 8.5%, or 18.5%. What do you think? What would happen if you had 10 of them? You'd be on your way to having wake-up money. Let me give you an example of something that you can do by, instead of using a 30-year loan, use a 15-year loan. Let's say that you purchased a property for $100,000. You put 20% down, which would be $20,000. You get an $80,000 loan, but this time you decide, I'm going to go for a 15-year loan, not a 30-year loan. This loan will pay off twice as fast. Let's pretend that during that 15 years, that property breaks even. You never have to put any money into it, but you never get any money out of it. Any increase in rent is overcome, let's say, by an increase in expenses. I don't think that's a realistic assumption, but let's just pretend that you never get a penny out of this property for 15 years. Let's also pretend that in that 15 years, that property never goes up a penny. It stays the same value for 15 years. So over that 15-year period, it's very simple. You put in $20,000. 15 years later, you have something that's worth $100,000 because the tenant has basically bought you the property. What is your return on investment? If you punch that into a financial calculator, you'll see that the return on investment is 11% a year. Or in other words, if you had $20,000 compounding every year at 11%, in 15 years it would be worth $100,000. This is about as conservative of an investment as you can find. You're in one of the three basics of life: food, shelter, clothing. You got it on a 15-year loan. You're assuming it doesn't go up at all. You're assuming the rents don't go up at all. Everything just stays the same for 15 years. You would still get an 11% return on investment. And now you own the property free and clear, so it's what? Generating cash flow. Now you have wake-up money. I really believe the most powerful investment that you can have is a free and clear house. You're in one of the three basics of life: food, shelter, and clothing. You have very little risk because the house is free and clear. You have no debt. You can match rents with anybody. If the market, somehow the rents start to drop a little bit, you can match them. And it's generating cash flow. I think it's about, and over time, the house generally has what? Gone up. So that's why real estate. Let's take a look at why here. Why in this particular market? Well, one of the things that we use to analyze markets is this website, FHFA.gov, the Federal Housing Finance Authority website. When you go to this site, what you want to do is you want to click on the house price index, because the house price index will show you what the appreciation is in your particular market. It analyzes, I think, 380 markets. If you're in a real small town, it probably won't be in there, but if you're in a reasonable sized community, it will be there. And what it does is this: it analyzes houses every time they sell. So if this house sold 9 years ago and it just sold again, it will calculate the appreciation or depreciation on that particular house. And then they'll publish an index for that community and then for that state. So when you go to this website, FHFA.gov, one of the things that I'd recommend that you start with is take a look at the house price appreciation by state. And you can see here the states that are ranked. They rank them in order of the last year. So this was done for the third quarter of 2011. And what we can see here is that North Dakota was the number one ranked with a 1 year appreciation of 5.40. You can see there the quarterly appreciation, the 5 year appreciation. And what I want us to focus on is the long-term trends. And you can see there the appreciation since 1991, the last 20 years. And what we can see in North Dakota, the last 20 years, it's been 133.31 was the appreciation over a 20-year period. What that means is that a $100,000 house in 1991 in North Dakota went up $133,000 and today is worth $233,000. If we go down and take a look at the national average, what we see here is for the United States, the average since 1991 was what? $80,000, or 80.57%, or in other words, a $100,000 house. How much did it go up in that 20-year period? $80,000. So a $100,000 house in 1991, in 2011, was selling for $180,000. That's the national average. And you can take a look at different markets. I would start by looking at your state. Then you can drill down and start to look at your community. And you can kind of see what's happened over time. Right now we're focused on a particular market cycle where there's been some declines. These are the numbers after the declines. If you went back a few years ago, the US number was above 100%. But it's declined. And even with that decline, still has that been a pretty good investment if you own that house for 20 years. The only reason it wouldn't be a good investment is when it went up, if you loaded up on what? Bad debt. Okay? So let's take a look again at that US average. 80% roughly since 1991, the last 20 years. If there was a $100,000 house in 1991, that house has gone up what? $80,000. What would it be worth in 2011? $180,570. Let's say that when we bought that house, we put a $20,000 down payment. And let's say we got a 15-year loan. So now it's 20 years later. We've had that house free and clear for 5 years. Our $20,000 investment is now worth what? $180,570. Would that be a pretty good investment? What would happen if you had 10 of them? And those houses are now what? Free and clear. And so they're generating what? Wake-up money. Okay? You guys got it. And what we've just shown you is the bonus. The real benefit is you have the wake-up money. These are houses now that are generating cash flow. Not a bad bonus. So let's summarize. If you had a $20,000 down payment, you have that house rented, the tenant is making the payments on the house. Now the house is free and clear. If that house is generating $10,000 to $15,000 in cash flow, now that the house is free and clear, that's wake-up money for you. It's cash flow. What if you had 10 of them? What would your life be like if you had 10 houses generating $10,000 to $15,000 a year? You'd have $100,000 to $150,000 a year of wake-up money. So some rules of thumb that I'd recommend that you look at in your particular market. All markets are not created equal. Real estate is very local. What we've showed you here is, number one, what's going on nationally, but also a way for you to start to look at your state and at your community. But here's some additional things we'd recommend that you look at. Number one, take a look at the vacancy rate. Equilibrium vacancy rate is about 5%. At 5% vacancy rate, there's enough apartments or houses available for tenants that they can find something, and yet there's not so many that it's a problem for the investors. That's just considered a kind of a balanced market. And what you want is a balanced market of 5% or less vacancy. Secondly, are the rents steady or rising? You want at least steady rents. Ideally, you want a market where over time the rents are rising. They don't have to necessarily be rising this year, but you want to take a look at a trend line. Is this a place that people want to live? Are there rising rents over time? What about the employment? Is it steady or is it growing? Or is this becoming a ghost town?